Hello and welcome to our podcast at Get Legally Speaking. Our legal conversation today will be about social media in family breakdowns. I am joined by barrister and judge Rachel Goodall from 3 Paper Buildings Chambers in London. Rachel is one of the few barristers who is consistently recommended in both of the leading legal directories, Chambers and Partners and the Legal 500. She sits as a deputy district judge in the civil courts and she is authorised to hear private children's cases. Thank you very much for joining us, Rachel.
It's an absolute pleasure, Hattie.
I was just saying to you, wasn't I, before we pressed record on this podcast, that I think this is a really topical subject about social media when there are breakdowns in family matters, whether it's separation or divorce or a period of just upset over whatever matter, because we certainly have acted upon really bad behaviour on social media and got in line the person that's badly behaving by way of issuing injunctions, obtaining applications for injunctions or very strong correspondence. So I think this is really current, and it actually occurs not only in family breakdowns. I mean, I know we're going to focus on family breakdowns, but it occurs in our lives more often than not, where social media is used and abused, basically, to the detriment of people. So I'm going to start, just so that we can start from the top, because it's a new subject matter for our listeners. What do we mean by social media in family breakdowns? Should we just give everybody a quick little brief on what we mean by that?
Yes, of course, Hattie. Well, social media is obviously platforms such as Facebook and other online platforms where people will post pictures and messages. And in the context of family breakdowns in particular, what I have seen, both when I've been sitting as a judge and also acting as a barrister, is people who will put messages or pictures about their court case. And it could be sending messages to their ex, it could be putting information on about children, or it could be contacting their ex or contacting children. Usually, when we talk about social media in the context of family breakdowns, it usually has a negative consequence.
Yes. So basically using social media to upset somebody, to the detriment of somebody, either where you shouldn't be contacting them if there are any court orders in place, or even before anything's gone to court, using it in a really horrible way to spread lies or talk about your feelings that you, in a way which will upset children in the matter, or the person that's involved with you in those circumstances. So yeah, I think that's a fair enough way to put it. So let's get on to our next question, which is quite interesting actually, and it is: my ex is posting information about me or our children or our court case on social media. What can I do to stop this, as I've asked them to remove the posts or the information online and they've just carried on?
Well, Hattie, this is incredibly common. What my advice would be is, depending on what you've already asked them to do, and it may be that you sent them a text or you've contacted them on the social media platform they've used, but I would say, first of all, to try a more formal approach. Now, if you have a solicitor acting for you, the obvious step, first of all, would be for the solicitor to send a letter explaining what has happened and why it's not acceptable that continues.
Yes.
If you don't have a solicitor acting for you, then it could be a more formal letter from yourself. In this day and age, a lot of us don't tend to write letters anymore. And that might be something that works, which is a letter that is stamped and addressed. You could even send it recorded delivery, which has a more formal air about it. Could be an email, although an email isn't always as formal. It might be you've already tried that. But if you haven't tried, if you just said something or a text, an email would be fine. I think a letter is a bit more formal, to just explain why you don't accept that those messages or that contact or the pictures or whatever is going on, why that shouldn't happen. Explain what the issue is. If those things don't work, then you can, if it is happening time and time again and it is a form you feel of harassment, you can go to the police about it, because the police can warn the person who is posting all the messages.
And I think that's quite key, actually, because if the police do react quickly enough, and bearing in mind that it just depends on how busy they are at the time, I guess, when you approach them. But if they can act quickly enough, then that could have quite an impact. And that person might think, oh God, no, I don't want to be told off by the police, or I don't want this documented anywhere really. And they could stop. But say if say, let's assume the police just say, yes, we will deal with it. Unfortunately, we've got XYZ priority cases to deal with. It's not something we can do straight away. What could somebody do? What can they do then? They've tried to write to them, it's not working, or their solicitor's written to them and they're still carrying on. What are the options, Rachel?
Well, you can make a court application. If there are family proceedings ongoing, or if there should be, say you've got a child together and there's a dispute about the child and your ex is posting nasty information about you online, that friends of yours are seeing or you're seeing, you can ask the court to make a prohibited steps order within those children proceedings to stop that person posting any information. And I see that a lot recorded in children orders. You can also make a court application in the civil context. So this is completely separate from family proceedings.
Yes.
They can make, and you mentioned it earlier, Hattie, that the court can order that there's an injunction. The court can stop you from posting certain information. So there are those two avenues, and it's really something that, if, as you say, if the formal approach hasn't worked, and if the police regrettably aren't able to do anything about it, you've probably got no other option but to go to court.
Yes, and I think that if you do have to consider going to court to make an application, either by way of an injunction or prohibitive steps order application, then you'll be able to prove, look, I've written to this person, or my lawyer has written to this person, they're still not stopping, and I tried to contact the police, or have contacted the police, and they're just not able to react quick enough, and therefore, your application will have more strength, because you're saying, this is everything I've done before I've come to a court to ask for the court's help. Yes, I mean, I have to say, somebody really can't be that clever if they are going to put it out on public domain on social media, put derogatory information about anyone, because it's always going to be traceable. It's there. It's not going to be able to hide somewhere. I mean, somebody can really quickly screenshot something, even if they went back and tried to delete the post, because that could happen. They could be putting up these posts knowing that lots of people are going to see them, and then they'll delete them, so that you almost as if to not allow you to have the evidence to go and do anything about it. So, I mean, there's this Snapchat thing, isn't there? And I personally don't know how that even works, but all I know of it is apparently it shows some information and then it disappears quite quickly once someone's looked at it or something. I mean, that's bizarre why that even exists.
You can still take a screenshot, Hattie, and we've all read, haven't we, in the press and heard stories about politicians or high profile figures who posted something maybe years ago, and they thought maybe they were having a private conversation with someone.
Yes.
They were maybe posting something innocuous, and it's come back to bite them. So the theme of this really, especially in the context of family breakdowns, is stay away from social media, because literally, you just don't know.
And responding as well, isn't it? I think that's key as well, isn't it, Rachel? Because if you, as a judge, you get somebody in front of you making an application to stop the other side, another person posting nasty, derogatory, hurtful things, and then what you do see perhaps is them responding to that in the same nasty, derogatory way. And that's two evils, isn't it? There's no right in those two wrongs. And I think there's a clear message that can be given here, which is just don't react to it.
Well, you're flaming the fire as well, potentially, because it might be that the person who's posting the messages is trying to get attention, and by you responding on that platform shows them that you've read it and that it's worked. So the best thing you can do, as hard as it is to just stay off social media. Don't look at it. If say you're not friends with your ex anymore on that platform,
just don't have sight of it. Delete the application.
Your ex is posting X, Y, Z. The best thing you can say is, please don't tell me about it. I don't want to know.
Yeah.
Because again, that happens a lot.
Well, that's it. I mean, there's ways of blocking information. I mean, this doesn't stop them doing it, obviously, but in order to try and, I guess, resist responding, because it must be very difficult. I mean, I'm grateful that I've never had to deal with nasty social media, but it must be pretty difficult when you know someone's putting out stuff, particularly, you know, hurtful, derogatory things, and you just want to say your piece or put it right. And I just don't think that's going to help anything, because if you do end up in court and that person says, well, they kept egging me on, or, you know, they were agitating me, or they were just being as bad, you know, then it's going to be pretty tough to try and say it's all one-sided and I'm getting it all from the person that's doing this stuff. Okay, so next question, Rachel, is can I prevent somebody from contacting my child on my child's social media channels? Would that person need permission from me as a parent to do so until the child is of a certain age and, you know, considered an adult?
Well, this is difficult because, as we all know, a lot of social media platforms say the minimum age is 13 to use them.
That's quite young, isn't it? I mean, I've got young children, but that is quite young.
Well,
really.
It depends on the child as well, because one 13-year-old is going to be very different from another 13-year-old. And it's not just about the age, but in my view, it's about your child's social and emotional intelligence and resilience, because we all know that a lot of bullying happens online, and actually a lot of research has been done about children using too much social media can become depressed and withdrawn and anxious. So the question about, can you stop someone contacting your child? Well, in the first place, what are you doing to check, depending on your child's age, what are you doing to check that the things that they are doing online is appropriate? So it may be at the end of each day, you're able to check what's going on. You're able to have a look at the messages they've sent. It may be things have to come through your phone. You need to be well aware of privacy settings and what your child is up to. So that would be the first thing, because really you can't prevent someone contacting. If your child has their own account and their own phone, there's not a lot you can do.
So there isn't, can't sort of say, right, I'm going to make, you're not listening to me, I've told you to stop contacting my child, whatever it is, and I will make an application to court to stop you contacting them because...
Well, you of course you can make an application, and the judge can either injunct you or prevent you by a prohibited steps order, prevent someone contacting a child. But before you even get there, really the message should be to the listeners, how can you ensure that your child is having appropriate conversations? Because you would want to know as a parent.
It's so difficult though, Rachel, isn't it? I mean, you know, these parental controls exist. I still don't know what I would do if at 13, which was a long time ago for me, if I had access to the internet with everything at our fingertips. I still don't know, you know, I can't even imagine that. Yet I've got a child who's 13 years old who have access to the internet. Yes, we've got all the parental controls and we do try to go through, but there's so much of it. And you know, we've had this, I've had this chat with another barrister on a GDPR podcast, and it just isn't, I don't think there's enough control going on to give us all the peace of mind that somebody you don't want to be contacting your child can get through. Because like you say, if your child has this media platform, then they are open to be contacted.
They're open to be contacted. Maybe you can have an honest conversation with your child. So if you have the sort of relationship with your child where you say, look, I'm allowing you access, but you've got to understand the ground rules. And it's just that slow education and trust to say, look, if someone contacts you and you feel a bit uncomfortable about it, please talk to me. I won't be angry with you. I won't tell you off. I won't restrict your usage, but come and talk to me. And if you talk to me, everything will be fine. Yeah. So of course you can't check absolutely everything, but if your child knows, oh, actually mum and dad, they're likely to check this. That might make them be a bit more vigilant themselves and just have this open dialogue, I think. But ultimately you can ask a judge to stop it.
Well, that's helpful to know. I mean, God forbid if anything got extreme to that degree. But one of the best pieces of advice I heard one of the teachers at one of my child's school deliver, actually, and I thought, God, that's so simple and so true, is you wouldn't go in the street and start speaking to strangers. You just wouldn't do it. But for some reason, online seems to provide this, this false safety net that whoever you speak to or engage with online, it's okay. And they can be complete strangers. And it's the most bizarre concept, I think, that we all carry, really. You know, it's a bit like LinkedIn. Somebody sends you a LinkedIn request that perhaps you haven't, engaged with in business actually, and you've never met them, but yet you feel safe to go, yeah, okay, here you go. Or on Facebook, yep, you can be my friend. But you wouldn't do that in real interaction, in real personal interaction. Madness.
Exactly.
Before I go off on another rant, let me get to the next question, Rachel. And that is, in the instance where my child lives with my ex, can I contact my child directly on social media to check if he or she is okay, or to have general conversation, even if my ex-partner is not talking with me? Boom.
Generally, Hattie, I would say no in almost every case. It's not a good idea. It obviously depends on the particular case, but
yes,
the thing you need to ask yourself is this, and depending on the age of the child as well, I know, the thing you need to ask yourself is, do you think it would cause the child to feel stuck in the middle? And inevitably, the answer to that question is going to be yes. What are you trying to gain from it? There may be a whole host of reasons why you're not having contact with your child. And it may be that if you see them on social media, or you have this urge, I just want to ask if they're okay. That's not the right channel. The right channel is, if you can't agree things with the parent they live with and you can't mediate, then you need to go to court. I
yes.
can't really, I've tried to rack my brains and think when would be a good situation to ever have a general conversation with your child who you're not seeing on social media. And I can't think of any, really. If your child sends you a message, then I would say to respond politely, acknowledging the message would be the right thing to do. But again, you've got to be very careful, because the message to the child in that instance should be, I'm going to talk about it with your dad or your mum, whoever you live with. Lovely to hear from you. But let's sort out this when we can talk properly. When's a good time for mum? So they know that it's all above board. Just don't get the child in a situation where they're feeling that they're having to, there's divided loyalties there.
Yes, I think that's really important. And I think, you hit the nail on the head when you said, if it's going to be upsetting for the child. And I know we've discussed this in previous podcasts, Rachel, where, we've said clear point blank, as it were, the child's feelings and well-being is paramount and first before any of the adults involved in any situation. And I think that's really key. And I don't think that, sometimes with the emotions being so high as they are, when you've fallen out with the father or the mother of your child, I can understand, people don't necessarily think, well, how is this going to affect the child? And I have to say, more often than not, it's sad, but in a lot of the matrimonial cases that we do, I don't see the parents considering the child's feelings. They will sit there and they will pull each other apart, whether it's on social media or whether it's in the room or whether it's on the phone, or they'll be on the phone talking to the lawyers and their legal teams, and the child's just sitting there in the background experiencing and living all this. So I think that, people sometimes do need to just stop and think, how is this going to affect my child if I do this? And like you say, if two parents are not on talking terms, and you go and you reach out to that child via social media, naturally that child's going to feel compromised in some way, which cannot be healthy to anyone, particularly the child. Okay, so we've got time for one more question. And I'm going to, I have to say, time flies when you're having fun. So I think we've answered a part of this question. So let's see how we're going to get on with it, Rachel. It says, my ex has posted pictures of our child on social media without my permission. I do not agree that our child's photos or details should be posted online. I've asked my ex to take the details off the social media channel and they're refusing to do so. I've written, let's assume that, there's been a letter to say, please, can you take this off? And still they're not adhering to it. I mean, what can I do legal about this? Now, I think this is really important because, there are lots of children in situations where their parents are apart and separate. And some people do have strong views that their children should not have their pictures put up by their parents onto social media channels for various reasons. I mean, you see it with sort of the famous elite, don't you? Some of them will put their children's pictures up like it's gone out of fashion, and others won't. They always have their children's faces sort of, you know, like a little teddy bear in front of it or something. I think Amanda Holden's one of the celebrities who doesn't like to have her children's photos up. But for example, the Kardashians have some lovely photos of their children posted. So it's one of those things. I think it's a personal reason why. But what can you do if really and sincerely your ex-partner who you share a child or children with is just blasting their photos everywhere, and you just don't want that to be the case?
Well, I have this a lot in the children cases I deal with, Hattie, where the client will say, look, I just don't agree that my ex is posting all these pictures of our child on and they won't take them off. And it's just a fundamental thing that some people don't believe that their children should be out there on the internet.
And I'm one of those believers, by the way. So I'm more of the Amanda Holden mindset.
But that's fine, Hattie. And actually, it's not necessarily about that your ex is doing inappropriate things on social media. It could be as simple as, and you might get on with your ex, it might just be that you don't want your child's face and name out there, because your child, they can't decide for themselves, can they, when they're young, as to whether they want their picture to be there, because potentially it can be there forever, can't it? So it all comes down to communication. And we talked about it, didn't we, Hattie, when we recorded our podcast about disputes with grandparents and children, and it's all about communication, because what you need to do is you need to get your ex to understand why you have the views that you do. You've got to decide, and it could be a whole host of things. It could be about screen time, bedtime, staying up late, watching certain things, playing computer games.
Because there'll be lots of things. But this is such a personal thing. Like we're saying, which is so personal to that person. If someone says, you know, because I get that with my eldest child, where he'll say, but Mum, I really want to put, and I'll say, no, do it, put what do you like up, you know, within reason, but not your pictures, your face and all of this, because like you say, this information now will be on there for the rest of my lifetime anyway, and probably for the rest of their lifetime. And you don't know when you get to a stage in life how that information could be used, in what context, in what form. Exactly. You know, and I'm a great believer in privacy. You know, your private life, your home life is private. It should be kept private. That's you know, one of my fundamental beliefs. So again, I guess it's off to court to get a prohibited steps order.
It's off to court, but I would say it comes down to communication. So if your ex is doing something you don't agree with, you maybe need to think, look, are we communicating properly? Do we need to draw up a parenting plan? And Kafkas, by the way, if you Google Kafkas parenting plan, has a great online template you can print out, sit down together or do it over phone or email or whatever, and work out, because it may be that if you can't agree on this, there are other things you don't agree on. So talk to them, if not, off to court.
And again, absolutely. I agree with everything you've just said. And I have to say, I think it's very important to say to our listeners, make sure you've tried everything before you even think about making an application to court, because we shouldn't, I know we say off to court, but you know, off to court when you've tried the letter, when you've tried the communication, when you've tried getting maybe a mutual family friend or a mutual family member involved to explain, you know, this is my wishes, these are my wants for the children, and you've got to respect that, and only think about making court applications, because it does cost you time and it will cost you money if you go to lawyers to do it for you, if you really have tried everything and you can prove to the court that you have tried everything.
Absolutely, Hattie.
Good. Well, that's brilliant. Rachel, what can I say? Another great podcast with one of my favourite barristers. There you go. I said it. So thank you so much for joining me, Rachel. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much, Hattie.
It's always fun.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. You go on, have a giggle. Why not? You know, judges do laugh, you know. There you are.
We do laugh. No, we always have fun, and it's so topical. But I just wanted to say, I know you want to finish. I just wanted to say, Hattie, we talked about social media and family breakdowns. I just wanted to add that it's not always negative. There are maybe some jewels of information that you can find on social media that you can use against someone if you are in court and you're battling and someone's posted something. Don't necessarily think that because it may be that you can find out lots of information. So I would just say be very careful about what you post. If you're going through financial proceedings.
Yes, and you're flashing your Ferrari out there or your new Rolex watch and you're claiming poverty.
that's all I wanted to add, because just be careful about what you post. But there we are. I talk far too much, but I just
No, you absolutely don't. I love that, Rachel. I love that about you. That's what this is all about. And thank you so much. And I'll say to our listeners, if you've had enough of listening to me and Rachel today, then don't forget to click and subscribe to our podcasts. And you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn and Instagram by searching getlegallyspeaking.com. Also visit our website at getlegallyspeaking.com. Thank you so much for listening.